Hi, I think I'm here live. Um, am I on here? So, in case this is working, which I'm pretty sure it is, I just wanted to introduce myself. I am Patti Callahan Henry, and I'm really excited that BookTrib has asked me to come on and talk to y'all. I get to sit here in my reading glasses so that I can see everything you're asking me. So not only do you get to see my messy office, but me in my dorky reading glasses. Um, this is my office. This is where I have written my past two novels. My new novel that just came out this summer is called And Then I Found You, and is my first novel I've ever written that was inspired by a true story, and it was about a story that happened in my family. So I'm here to answer any questions you have or to let you look around my office. We can pick up my computer and walk around and talk about whatever you want to talk about. So shoot them at me. Okay, Susan asks the first question, and she says, your most recent book is based on an event in your life. For your other stories, do you find the voices of your characters talking to you or leading you to the way the story should unfold? I don't have much control over the way my story goes. And this story was different, Susan, because this story I tried to tell real the first time. And as I tried to tell it real the first time, I did have control and it didn't go so well. So, as soon as I allowed my characters to take over and wrote the book in a fictionalized form, I was able to allow the characters to take over the novel instead of using myself and using real words and real life to take over the story. So, yes, I have always allowed the voices of my characters to talk to me and lead the way. And I've always found that if I allow them to do that and I let go of a little bit control, the story is much better than if I sit there and try and tell them what to do, which sounds a little spooky, but actually isn't. Because just like friends, when we learn to allow them to show themselves through action, it's better than allowing them to show themselves through our control. But I could talk about that for a long time, but I have another question from Teresa Reading. Since And Then I Found You is based on a true story, will there be a follow up? No way. Teresa, that's a great question, and it's the first time I've been asked that question because, um, yeah, I just don't think I could do all that again. I don't think I could delve into the world of um, my family again for a long time. It was an amazing and fun journey, and yet at the same time, I just don't think that it needs to be continued. In real life, of course, it continues. And if you read the real story, which is actually on Amazon under a book called Friend Request, you can see, where the real story came from. And everybody's lives are moving on and are fun and happy, and they don't need to be written about. So no, there won't be any sequels to it. Marjorie wants to know, when did you first realize you wanted to write? Marjorie, I think I first realized I wanted to write when I could hold a crayon. And instead of coloring pictures, I colored words. Um, I don't remember even learning how to read. I've been obsessed with story for a very long time, for most of my life, all of my life. And been obsessed with story and with mythology and with books. And they've always been the one thing that has kept me sane in this crazy world and in my crazy childhood. And um, I didn't realize I wanted to write a novel until I was in my mid 30s, though, about 10 years ago. Well, I guess that would have been my late 30s, right? So I didn't realize I wanted to write a novel till about 10 or 11 years ago, but I always knew that I wanted to write, and I always did write. I've been writing since I could, like I said, could hold a crayon. We just moved 2 years ago to this house and to this office that I'm in, and I found all my old journals, and I've been journaling and writing since um, elementary school. So I've always known I wanted to write, but I didn't realize I wanted to write a novel for till about 10 years ago. And Jobe, Joube, I don't know how you say your name, I'm sure that's not your name, wants to know, how long did it take you to write this novel? The incident that inspired this novel happened exactly 3 years ago this May. So from the time that that happened, that we had the friend request from my niece who found us on Facebook, this book is about, I didn't even tell you what it's about. This book is about my niece who was placed for adoption 23 years ago. And she was my sister's child, and she found us on Facebook 3 years ago this May. So I've been thinking about or working on this book since last 3 years ago May. But it took me about 2 years solid writing to write the entire novel. But the incident that inspired it happened 3 years ago this May. And Sharon wants to know, oh, thank you, Sharon. Sharon said, thank you for doing this chat. You're welcome. I wish somebody could talk back to me, though. I feel really odd talking alone in my office like this. I think it makes me sound a little crazy. I talk alone to myself in my office a lot, but now I'm doing it on a camera. You asked, you said, I loved and then I found you. And when you write an emotional book such as this, is it hard to recover after you finish it up? Oh, Sharon, yes. And you were the first person who has ever asked me that. I finished the novel, the very first draft, about this time last year. And I knew I had to start writing another novel almost immediately. And I did, but I couldn't, it was very hard for me to emotionally pull myself away from this novel. And it is from all my novels, though. This one isn't any different than any of the others. Just because this one was inspired by a true story did not make it any more difficult to separate from. Whenever I finish a book, I carry the characters with me for a long time. My very first novel, which came out 10 years ago this coming year, called Losing the Moon, I still think about those characters. And sometimes I will be staring off into space or driving, and I'll think, oh, Amy should really, and I'll think of something Amy should do, and I have to remind myself that that book came out 10 years ago, and Amy can't do anything else. The book is done. So even books, 9 books ago, the characters stay with me, and I have a hard time leaving them behind. And I think, Sharon, one of the hardest things is to find the voice of the new characters. Once I start writing a new book, I have to find the voices of the new characters because I've never wrote a sequel. And I have to separate from the voice of the old character and really work my way into the new characters' voices. And that takes me some time. And usually when I go back to rewrite the first draft, I will see that in the beginning of the novel, I have really almost incorporated some of the characters from the previous novel into the characters' voices, and I have to weed that out. And so, yes, it is difficult. And thanks for asking. It is because I move from one to the next pretty quickly, sometimes that is hard. Hi, Robin. You asked, I tend to read a lot of nonfiction during the year and then lighten up when the warm weather sets in. Therefore, I was wondering what is in your beach bag this summer. I can definitely answer that. It's this vodka drink. No, I'm just kidding. You mean what books are in my beach bag this summer? Some of my favorites so far this summer are all of my favorite summer authors. But so Mary Kay Andrews' Ladies' Night, I love, and it's in my beach bag. And Dorothea Benton Frank, The Last Original Wife, is in my beach bag. Anne Rivers Siddon's book isn't out yet, but I will read that the minute it comes out because I read everything she writes the minute it comes out. Mary Alice Monroe, her book came out today. It's called Summer Girls, and it came out today. And I'm really excited about that book because it's a trilogy. And so her characters will carry on for the next 3 books. So I hate saying goodbye to her characters, and this time I won't have to. A book I found this summer that I've just fallen madly in love with is a book by Susan Rebecca White, and it is called A Place at the Table. And I could pick up my computer, I think, and show you some of the other books. Nope, they're downstairs. But there are, those are the books I have right now that I plan on reading this summer, and I'm sure I'll think of some more as we move along in the chat. Hi, Diana. You said, I was fascinated with reading about the Jubilee event in Coming Up for Air and how it ties in with the title and Ellie's real life. Is it a real phenomenon, and how did you find out about it? Diana, I love this question. Thanks for asking it. The Jubilee is a real thing, and for those of you who are watching this and haven't read Coming Up for Air and don't know what a Jubilee is or what Diana is talking about, a Jubilee is an event that happens in the Gulf Coast, or on the Gulf Coast in the Mobile Bay. They say it happens only 2 places in the world, on the Mobile Bay and in the Tokyo Bay, but it doesn't count in Tokyo because you can't eat the fish that come out of the Tokyo Bay. And you can in the Mobile Bay. And what it is an event that happens in the summer where the wind and the rain and the storm and the tide all combine exactly right to allow all the fish and all the crab and all the eel and everything in the Mobile Bay to come to the surface for air, which is where the title came from, coming up for air. And they come up for air because of the odd phenomenon when those things come together. Scientists say that it takes the oxygen out of the bottom of the bay. And it's actually quite a mystery because all the elements for a Jubilee can be present and it still not happen. And yes, I used the Jubilee in Coming Up for Air as a metaphor for the main character's life. And yep, it is a real event. And I learned about it because one of the places where it happens, Fairhope, Alabama, is one of my favorite places in the South, and has one of my favorite bookstores in the South, Page and Palette. And I heard about it when I was there. And they told me the story, and I actually thought they were making it up. But it is a real thing. And I've never seen one. And every time I go, I have my fingers crossed that it's going to happen while I'm there, but it hasn't happened yet, and I'm hoping it will. And I knew I had to write about it, and I interviewed a lot of people to try and get it right. And people who've read about it say I got it right, but I wish I could see it in real life. Jean Stafford. Hi, Jean. You asked who or what shaped your process of writing the most. Wow. That is an entire essay. Who or what shaped your process of writing the most? I think that would have to, the answer to that question would change year by year. I think growing up the way I grew up is probably shaped my process of writing the most. I grew up in a preacher's family, and I moved when I was very young, or in the kind of tender age of 12 years old. I don't know if you'd call that very young. But growing up in a preacher's family where storytelling is pretty much, what he does for a living, telling the same story over and over in a different way. And moving when I was 12 years old, I became very addicted to, would probably be the right word, to stories and books. Because when I moved at that young an age, it took a while for us to find where we were going to live, and I switched schools every year for 3 or 4 years in a row. And books became a kind of a lifeline for me. And I was reading, everything from Judy Blume to C.S. Lewis, which is about as wide a span as you can get. And it was a bedrock for me in a world that I didn't understand. And in huge change in my life, I would say that is shaped my process of writing the most, Jean, because I realized the power of story. And it was also about that time that I started reading mythology, and that also shaped my process of writing. Read always. Your question is, did you find writing about an event inspired by your own life history cathartic? Wow. I don't know if I found it cathartic, because it actually didn't happen to me. It happened to my sister. It happened to me in that it was part of my family, and I was an integral part of the story, and I was astounded, and it was a profound experience to meet my niece after 20 years. But I didn't find it cathartic. I think if my sister wrote it, it would be cathartic for her, and I often prod her to do that, but it wasn't cathartic for me. because it was challenging more than it was cathartic. Prairie Dawn, you asked, I've read that your niece contacted you via Facebook first. So did you deliver the news to your sister? So wonderful to meet you. Dawn, it's wonderful to meet you too. I did and didn't deliver the news to my sister. In many ways, she delivered it to me because what happened was my niece Facebook friended me and found my sister on my friend. She was looking for my sister. She wasn't looking for me. And she found my sister through my list of friends. And my sister emailed me and asked me who this young girl was because she had an inkling that it might be the daughter she had placed for adoption. So yes, I went online and looked Catherine up, and yes, I did call my sister and say, yes, I think this is her. I think she found you. So yes, I did break the news to my sister in that way, but it was my sister who called me and asked if I knew who the young girl was, and I didn't know who she was until I started looking. So my sister suspected first, but Catherine, my niece, did find me first. Worldly Goods, you asked. You have an app called Wildflowers. I read it was inspired by a scene in one of your novels. Can you explain to us the concept connection a little bit, and do you use your app often? Hi, Worldly Goods. I wish I knew everybody's first name. And I wish I could see you. I feel strange that you can see me and I can't see you. In a minute, we're going to stop looking at me and we're going to walk around my office because y'all have to be tired of looking at me chatting. Yes, Wildflowers was inspired by a scene in my book Coming Up for Air, and it was one of the more profound scenes for me. I don't know about for the reader, but it was one of those scenes that when I wrote it, I took the book in a new direction. When I wrote the wildflower scene in Coming Up for Air, I understood why the main character, Ellie, had the relationship she had with her mother, Lily. And it was one of those scenes that might not explain it to the reader, or the reader might not feel as profoundly about the scene as I did. But when I wrote it, the book broke open for me, if that makes sense. When I wrote that scene, the book took on an entirely new meaning, and I understood the relationships better. And in writing that scene, I did a lot of research afterwards about what different wildflowers meant and what they meant when you gave them to someone, because all flowers, wildflowers and domesticated flowers, and have a meaning. You know, a rose means love, and hyacinth means I'm sorry. And I was brainstorming with some buddies of mine who make apps, and we thought it would be fun to make an app where you could send somebody a flower that meant something. And yes, I do use it. I do use it to send I'm thinking about you, or congratulations, or I'm sorry, because there's an I'm sorry flower. And that's where it came from. Okay, hashtag books. It says, you're a Southern fiction mastermind. Oh, I don't know about that, but thank you. That's the nicest thing anybody said to me in a long time. A Southern fiction mastermind. Wow, can you see I'm blushing on the camera? What other genre would you like to take a crack at? Hashtag books, what a great question, because I would love to take a crack at a young adult book. And I haven't done it yet, and I'm not doing it right now because I'm finishing up a novel that comes out this time next year, and so I need to focus on that. But I would love to try a young adult book, and I think one of the reasons I would really like to try that is because I've raised 3 young adults. And also I find that when I'm writing, often when I'm writing, that 12 and 13-year-old voice seems to be the most natural for me. And I often, in almost all of my novels, you get to hear from a young adult, a 12 or 13-year-old person. Even in the book that's out right now, And Then I Found You, you hear from Emily, who is 13, about every 3 or 4 chapters until you catch up with her. And I really enjoy that. I don't know what it says about me. Maybe I have some arrested development. Who knows? But I have wanted to take a crack at that. So thanks for asking. And maybe you'll inspire me to get on that. Hi, Elaine. You say, my first book will be released on August 6th. And I am finding the publishing world such a different universe. this is true, than that of just writing. I'd really admire the close-knit group of writer friends that is yours. How can I reach out to other writers without looking like I'm selling? I won't read your last sentence there, Elaine, because I'm sure you do not stink at selling anything. We all feel the same way, and the writing world and the publishing world is a really different universe. You're exactly right about that, and congratulations on your new book. Maybe you can type after this what it's called so we can tell everyone. But yes, it is a completely different universe than that of just writing. And we as writers talk about this a lot. There's the writing world, and there's the publishing world, and there's the writing world, and there is the PR world, and we have to use two different parts of our brain to do it. And I don't think any writer ever feels like you're selling yourself by reaching out to them. I know I don't feel that way when writers reach out to me, but I am very blessed after 12 years in the business that I do have a very close-knit group of writer friends. But I've met almost all of them, Elaine, at writers' conferences, book festivals, other signings, because when I first started writing, we didn't have the social media world that we have now. There was no Facebook or Twitter or social media chat. I'm not even positive there was Skype. So most of the close-knit friends, writer friends that I have, I met in real world at writers' conferences and at book festivals, which are the absolute best as both readers out there and as writers. So, and you're welcome to contact me. I will not feel like you're selling yourself to me. Susan the Book Bag. What a great title, The Book Bag. Sounds like a good book title, right? Susan the Book Bag. What is your writing ritual when you are working on a book? Okay, this might be a good time. I'm going to walk you around my office a little bit because that's why we're here, so you can see where I work. So my writing, okay, I have to get it off me. So my writing ritual is that this is the desk where I mostly write by hand. And so I write by hand and I journal a lot when I'm starting to work. And then I have a lot of things on my walls that inspire me. Am I making y'all seasick? Okay. I have a lot of things on my wall that inspire me when I'm working, and they all have meaning to me for one reason or another. So whether it's a poem or a picture of my kids, here, let's go down this way a little bit, or a quote or something somebody's made me or drawn for me. This last book had feathers in it, so I had plumes up on my wall, and a post that my daughter gave me, a poster. That there is my favorite photograph by my dearest friend who is a photographer. And I have a lot of pictures of my kids. I don't know, can you all see? And old book covers and notes my kids have written me when I've been on book tour, so they keep me motivated. And then, of course, my whole office is covered in, okay, I'm showing you the wall, not my bookshelf, aren't I? My whole office is covered in books, just books and books and books and books and more books. So a lot of the inspiration comes from what I surround myself with. And when I'm first starting to work on something and I'll sit down and wonder about something, like my new book has a lot of letterpress in it. And so I have some books over here on letterpress that I have been perusing and reading about. And so as far as the ritual goes, what I will do is I will start reading about what I'm interested in. And I will start to really dig into the themes behind what I'm writing. And as I start to do that, I start to journal about it. I start to write about it. I start to get to know the character. I write an opening scene that usually ends up not being the opening scene. And then I'm not an outliner, so I just let it rip. I try to get through as much of it as I can. I write the end, and then I do this crazy thing I'm about to show you. So then I outline it, and I make these huge poster boards that look a little bit like I might belong in the movie A Beautiful Mind. and I pin them up underneath my desk, and I outline the entire novel so that I can decide then if it actually works. So my writing ritual under the big umbrella is to start to look at inspirational things, start to find what I want to write about. I start to get to know the characters. I write a rough draft. I put my characters in a situation that I don't know how they're going to get out of, because that's the fun for me. I ask the what if, and I put them in a situation that they don't seem to be able to get out of. And I write the rough draft, and then I outline it, and then I try and fix it. And right now, I'm in the try and fix it phase of writing, which I usually dread, and then always ends up being a lot more fun than I thought. And if you mean ritual by daily ritual, I get up every morning and I come up here and I drink my coffee and I make sure my kids are okay and I start writing. So that is my. I'm not really sure if I have a daily ritual, but the umbrella ritual is what I more so talk about. Because I have 3 wild children, my daily ritual has more to do with get to it as early as I can and as much as I can and as often as I can. That's about as ritualistic as I get. And then on my desk this way, I have a lot of things that I look at, not my water bottle, that I look at and use when I'm writing. I always light a candle, which isn't so much a ritual as that I work in the attic, and I like the smell of a candle better than I like the smell of the attic. Okay, moving on. Hi, Marjorie. Do your friends ever find themselves in your books? Not as far as they know. They might. I've never used somebody on purpose, and I've never based an entire character on one of my friends, but they have inspired some pretty fun things. In Losing the Moon, I tell this story a lot because she doesn't mind. In Losing the Moon, I needed a really great scene to show that the character was preoccupied because her first love returned into her life. And she was a little preoccupied with what to do about that. And a friend of mine had been preoccupied not about a first love, but about her child, and had driven off with the gas pump still in her car. And I thought that was such a beautiful example of being preoccupied that it actually did end up in my novel. So I will use things like that about my friends. And I mentioned when I was showing you around my office that one of my dearest friends is a photographer. And I did make one of the characters a photographer, and I did use some of my friends' quotes about what it felt like to be a photographer and when you got the just right photo and things like that. So yes, my friends do end up in my novels, but they've never ended up as a complete character. There have been pieces of them that have ended up, and I've used their names. I've used a lot of my friends' names. So I have to put back on my glasses to see the next question. Okay. Oh, thank you, #books. She says, I love this virtual tour. There's more. If y'all want to see ask me anything and I'll pull it out of a drawer or pull it out. If you want to know what's back there, we'll talk about it. I just don't want to show you something you're not interested in. Sharon, can you tell us about the angel wings on the wall behind you? See, ask me things like that. That's great. Yes, I can tell you about those angel wings, and yes, they do have special meaning. When I first moved here, I live in Birmingham, Alabama. And I moved here 2 years ago. And when I moved here, I had left my home and my office of 16 years in my house in Atlanta, Georgia. And I was a little unsettled. I was unsettled. And I wasn't sure that I could settle into a new office and a new space. And this was a smaller house, and so I kind of took over the attic and spray painted it white and tried to settle into my office. And I was at a little shop downtown. I live in Mountain Brook, Alabama, which has a cute little village. And I was shopping, and I went into a little antique store, and I was essentially wandering aimlessly. Like I said, I was a little unsettled and trying to find my place, not only in my own world, but in this new town. And I walked into this cute little antique store and I saw those wings right there. And the lady told me they came from a flea market in France. And I brought them home and I brought them upstairs to my office and I hung them up and I said, this is gonna be home and this is where we're gonna work. So thank you for asking. Those were important to me and they did kind of settle me into the space. No, it's not because I'm an angel or anything like that. Hashtag book says, what an awesome office. Oh, thank you, but that's because I cleaned it up today. I cleaned up my office today for y'all. There's a lot of papers underneath the desk right now. So, but thank you very much for that kind word. Do y'all have any other questions you want to ask? Jessamy Rice, thanks so much for sharing how you work. How long do you write for each day? That is a question that depends on the day. So on a good day, when I'm in my routine and I'm waking up and coming straight up to my office and beginning to work straight away, I try to write for 2 or 3 hours. And this usually happens when the kids are in school and nobody's sick and there's not a parent-teacher conference. So in other words, that is on a really good day. But on a really good day, I try to get everybody off to school, come straight up here and write for 2 or 3 hours, and then spend the rest of the day on either publishing business, publishing work, emails, the other myriad of things we have to do as women, moms, wives. Now, it's summertime right now, which means everybody's home. So my writing routine is a little unsettled, and I feel as if a solid hour of writing is pretty kick-ass. So it depends. How long I write each day depends on not only the season of the year, but the seasons of my life. And right now, an hour a day I'm feeling pretty good about, and the rest of the time is spent in editing and running around in the summer craziness with football and baseball and kids and the things we all have to do. But tomorrow I plan on writing for 4 hours. We'll see how that goes. Okay. Book Fan MB. How do you come up with character names? I loved the name Meredy in a previous novel. Book Fan, I love that you noticed the name Meredy. That is awesome. That is from my second novel, right? Isn't that From Where the River Runs? And I loved that name. And I call myself a name stealer, which actually I've often thought would be a great title for a book. But I am a name stealer. And if I hear a really cool name, I write it down. I'll often hear a really cool name and think I'll remember it, and then I don't, and I'm very disappointed when I get home and think, what was that name? And I can't think of it, so I try to write it down. But the name Meredy I stole, because I'm a name stealer, from an article in, I think it was Town and Country. I'm not even sure. It's not a magazine I get, but it was a magazine I was reading at an airport, and it was this article about this beautiful woman and her horse farm and her family, and I stole the name because I thought it was beautiful. And I've done that a lot. But I also like when people steal my characters' names. I just had, and it's happened before, but just with this last book, coming up for air, I had a woman who loved the name Hutch so much that she named her newborn baby Hutch. So there is a little 1-month-old rolling around in his crib right now with the name Hutch, inspired by a character in my book. So not only do I steal names, but people steal mine. So that's kind of cool. But I just listen. I listen. I don't go through phone books or anything like that, but I just listen to people. BookTrib. Hey, BookTrib members. Oh, you're not talking to me, are you? Only 30 minutes left. Shu 115. What advice would you give to someone who would like to start writing? What advice would I give to someone who wants to start writing? I say this and it sounds like I'm being a little sarcastic, and I'm not, but read, 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 write, 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 read, 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 repeat, rinse, do again. I feel as if all the reading I did growing up and all the writing I did growing up were the two things that allowed me, when the day came that I said, I'm going to write a novel, it was the previous 35 years of reading and writing that allowed that to happen. Now, after that, I had always advised to read some of my favorite books on writing, which are listed on my website. I always advise, which are, the Givens, On Writing by Stephen King, Bird by Bird by Anne Lamott, Walking on Water by Madeleine L'Engle. And I always encourage people to read some of those favorite books on writing. I always encourage people to go to writers' conferences and book festivals, which is the same advice I gave the author who asked about meeting other writers. In this world of social media, of course, there's all the social media things you can do when you first start writing. But the most important is reading and writing and fine-tuning the craft of writing. I always talk about the big difference between the art and craft of writing. And I think that the one or the other comes more natural for people. It's the rare writer that both of those come naturally. And the art of writing came easier for me. I enjoyed words and the play of words, and I was very into poetry and, like I said, mythology. But it was the craft of writing that I had to learn. Some of the very first feedback I got on my first novel 13 years ago was beautiful writing, but where's the story? And so I had to learn to tell a story properly. And that comes with the craft of writing. And that's why I often encourage writing classes, writing groups, writing workshops. And you won't take everything you learn, and nobody should take everything they learn. Not everybody has the answer. And there is no the answer in writing. I wish there was, but that's usually my advice when someone first starts writing. Wesley Van Zant. Really, Wesley? You're really here on the live stream video with me? Okay, Wesley Van Zant is my son's best friend from Atlanta. Do you have any advice for new writers or writers that struggle with ADD? That sounds like the exact same question that the previous person asked, so I would give the same answer. And Wesley, I know you're probably joking about the ADD, but I'm actually going to answer that because I believe that writing is one of the very few things that someone with ADD can do with such intense focus that the ADD sort of disappears for a little while. Writing is not just a task where you sit down and doing your work, and I know it's different than doing homework, but writing as far as a passion is one of the things that you can jump down that rabbit hole and your focus becomes so fine-tuned because you're making it up and you're in a different world. It's way different than writing for homework or writing a research paper. Writing a fictional piece of work allows me to focus in ways that I would never focus in my regular life. I have a hard time doing a task for more than 30 seconds in my regular life. I'm usually folding laundry while at the same time doing the dishes, while at the same time answering emails, while at the same time talking to my kids, while at the same time making the beds. And writing is the one thing that I do where I'm not thinking about doing anything else. When I'm working on a book, I don't really think about doing anything else, and my mind doesn't wander the way it wanders when I'm doing other tasks. And I miss you, Wesley Van Zant. Elaine, welcome back. My book is called A Southern Place. Elaine, that is a beautiful title, and it's a generation family saga set in the South. I am so glad that you came back to tell all of us that. We will all have to look it up. Everybody go up, look up Elaine's new book, A Southern Place. And of course, you are not being a hack salesman by saying this. That is why we as writers all come together so we can support each other. Susan Coster, thanks for agreeing to send me a book plate. Don't die, but I found your book at Dollar Tree. I will not die that you found my book at Dollar Tree. I don't care where anybody finds my book, as long as you find them. Listen, there's 9 of them out there, and there'll be a 10th one out this time next year, and I am thrilled no matter where somebody finds my books. The library, the bookstore, a friend, the Dollar Tree. If you found my book, you found my book, and I'm happy that you found my book and that you are reading them and loving them, because you wouldn't be here and you wouldn't be writing to me if you didn't love them. So I don't care if you find them on a park bench. Sharn 3960. Do you always have book ideas, or do you struggle coming up with a new idea for your next book? Sharn, that is a question that I try not to think too much about. And when I do think a lot about it, I get a teeny bit panicked because I don't ever know where my next idea is going to come from. And when I think a lot about that, it's actually a scary proposition because I never want to stop writing. I have friends who say that, for example, I just told y'all about my friend Mary Alice's book that's out today called Summer Girls. And she says she has book ideas lined up like airplanes on a runway, and that she always has something that she wants to write next. And it's not that way for me. I usually think of what I want to write next about the time I'm finishing the work I'm working on. And if I'm halfway through a novel and I start thinking about what to do next, I will get a wee bit panicky, even though I'm not a panicky kind of person, because I will get afraid that another idea that I think is worthy of a full-length novel won't show up. Now, I have a million ideas a day. My brain moves too fast for me. I'm always thinking about something and what-ifing everything, if what-ifing is a real thing. But I what-if everything. What if that yard guy tries to get in the back door? What if that woman walking down the street is... I'm always what-ifing. And yet those what-ifs are rarely big enough to make or fill an entire interesting full-length novel. They might fill up an essay, or they might fill my brain for a little while, but they're not going to give you a full-length novel. And so I often worry that the right what-if won't show up, and yet so far it always does. I am just now finishing my next novel. I'm editing it and polishing it and cleaning it and making it worth reading for you. And I'm at about that point, I'm starting to think about what to do next. So I don't know where the ideas come from. They come from big what-if land, if there is such a thing. But thank you for asking. Sharon Berger, your writing has transported me to such realms. What a wonderful setting and place to be. Have you traveled for fun? Sharon, I do travel for fun, and all of my novels have been set in the South, except for a little bit of this novel, And Then I Found You, was set in New York. The young girl lived in New York. And my novel, When Light Breaks, we traveled to Ireland in the 1920s. And yes, I've been to that village, and I did travel for that book I was traveling there anyway, but while I was there, I did some research. And I do travel for fun. I don't travel for fun as much as I used to right now because I'm on the road so much for book tour and for work that that to leave home again is hard. But yes, I love seeing new places and meeting new people, and I am so blessed that my job allows me to do that. I just got off the road for this book, And Then I Found You. I was on the road for 8 weeks for that book, on and off, and I went everywhere from here to LA to Greenville to New York to Connecticut. And every time I go to a new city or a new place and meet new people, I am stunned by how it widens my world, and I do love to travel. And yeah, I do travel for fun. Not as much as I would like right now. Mina DeCaro, hi Patti, joining the discussion only now. I haven't had the chance to read your book yet. Can you define the book and yourself as a writer in 3 adjectives? Okay, I should have read that. I should have read that question to myself before I read it out loud, because I would have skipped it. Can I skip it anyway? I won't, Mina. That's a great question. Define the book and yourself as a writer in 3 adjectives. Wow, that seems almost the kind of question that somebody else should answer for me. I'd like to know what somebody else would describe my books or myself as in 3 adjectives. I think that they are Oh, this has totally stumped me. I'm about to reach over to my thesaurus over there and get it. I would describe my books as heartfelt. I would definitely describe them as heartfelt. They are very, I dig deep for my novels, and although I start with a what if, I take my characters through some pretty tough stuff to get to the conclusion. So they're definitely heartfelt. I think that they are sometimes sarcastic. That's probably a word that's better suited to me than my books. I like to think my characters are a little feisty and strong willed. That's probably also. So there we go. That was three, right? Feisty and strong willed. That's how I would describe not only myself, but my books. And heartfelt. Kate Summer. Hey, Kate. I wish you were actually here with me. What describes you in one word? I'm just going to go back to the previous question. I would say maybe feisty. Um, I don't know. I would like to think all good things, but I'm sure if I asked my family or even you, Kate, to pick one word to describe me, it wouldn't be the same as the ones I would use to describe myself. Um, Kate, for everybody who's listening here, is my college best friend, and I was going to ask her to chime in and just use one word to describe me instead of me using one word. Hey, Jean. Glad to see your name up here. So glad you're on Facebook. Do you find readers are a help as you write? Oh, Jean, I absolutely find readers are a help when I write. I love to get on Facebook and see the comments, and I love the questions people ask. And I have been stumped before and left questions for my readers. What would you do? I've asked, what are your favorite novels? I've asked, what are your favorite places to visit? I've asked, what are your favorite flowers? And my readers are, wow, they're almost like fuel for a writer. And I mentioned earlier that I didn't, social media wasn't around when I first started writing, and we didn't have that kind of back and forth give and take with readers and writers that we get on Facebook and Twitter and getting to do a live chat like this. Although I really wish y'all were chatting back to me. I feel quite alone here in my office. I wish I could see you. But it has made a big difference. And we often lament the hours we lose to Facebook and Twitter, strolling through it and stalking one another and being on Facebook. But I really believe that the time that we might lose, and I would use air quotes there, on Facebook, we gain with the interactions that we have with our readers and with other writers. So we value the interaction with the readers as much as readers, I hope, value interaction with the writers. Job, I love what you were saying about writing in character voice. It is very inspiring. After your first book, did you stay with the same publisher? I did not stay with the same publisher after my first book, but I did stay with them for 6 books. I'm going to scoot around because I'm not used to sitting still for so long. I did stay with my first publisher for 6 books, and I love them, and I still love them. I stayed with Penguin, New American, NAL, and New American Library, and they published my first 6 novels. And then my 7th novel was not a novel; it was a novella, and it was published by somebody who specialized. It was called Vanguard, and they specialized in Christmas novellas. And then my last 3 novels are with St. Martin's Press, and I really love them too. So I have been very lucky in the publishing world and had amazing editors. The editor for my first 6 novels was Ellen Edwards, and I believe she might be one of the best editors in the country. And I adore the editor I work with now. Her name is Brenda Copeland, and she's at St. Martin's Press. And she is smart and funny, and she pushes me harder than I've ever been pushed. So I've been very lucky with my editors and my publishing houses. Diana Lee asked, what has surprised you most since becoming a published author? What has surprised me the most? I'm not sure if it surprised me, but what has been one of the biggest blessings for me, or the thing that I didn't anticipate, was the incredible writers community. Um, I don't know. I don't know what I would do without them. In all sincerity, the world that I have found inside the publishing world with other writers, with editors, with my PR, the PR people I've come to know, with the staff at my publishing houses, with the marketing, the the friendships and relationships that I have come to know over the past 12 years since I was published have been my agent, Kim Whalen, they have been some of the most rewarding relationships I've ever had. So that surprised me a lot after I became published. Um, the other thing that surprised me a lot after I became published was that didn't live a glamorous life. I mean, I'm half kidding, but I think that we all imagine being published and living, sitting on the bed in our, with a tray and staff, and publishing is a job. It's another job, and it's not glamorous in any way whatsoever, except for the day your book is published and you pick it up and you see it on the front table at Barnes and Noble, and it's so exciting. But there's a lot of surprises. I was also very surprised, Diana, by through the years how much publishing has changed, and that publishing has changed so dramatically in the past 10 years that that's actually a completely different conversation. But that has surprised me too. I didn't realize how fast publishing would change. Teresa Reading asks me, does one of your novels stand out as a favorite for you? And we just got the 10-minute warning, by the way, so I'll try and make this a quick answer so that I can answer another couple questions. Teresa, that's like asking me a little bit, which is my favorite child. And it's so hard for me to say. And yet I can tell you that they each are my favorite for different reasons. Usually my favorite is the one I'm working on, so you haven't read it yet. And I really do love the book I'm working on right now. And yet, I love Losing the Moon because it is the book that got me published. So that stands out as a favorite for me in a big way because it's the book that got me published. But it's actually not the first book I wrote. The first book I wrote is called Between the Tides. So that's one of my favorites because it is the first book that I wrote. And it was the fourth book that was published of mine, but it was the first book I wrote. And so that has a really special place in my heart. But they all do for different reasons. Sharon asks, do you find Birmingham to be an author-friendly community? I'll be visiting there in a couple weeks. Birmingham is an incredibly author-friendly community. I would even just call it an artist-friendly community, Sharon. Artists, authors, it is a really rich artistic environment in Birmingham. And, Atlanta was the same way, but Atlanta was much more spread out. And so I didn't really find my niche in the suburbs of Atlanta as far as an author-friendly community. The author-friendly community in Atlanta, I would say, is in Decatur, and I was 40 minutes away from it. But Birmingham is a very artistic-friendly community, and I have quite a few brilliant author friends in the community, and I do love living here because of that. We do have a nice, tight-knit community. Sharon asked me, is writing the fulfillment of your dreams? In many ways, Sharon, it is. It is. I think that I didn't even know that was a dream until 12 years ago. And yet I think it fulfilled every dream I had even as a child, but I didn't know that's what it meant. And I knew that my dreams for my life somehow surrounded storytelling and somehow had something to do with story, and yet at the same time I wouldn't have been able to articulate that it was writing that was my dream, and yet I knew it had something to do with story. And I was always exploring that in different ways, whether it was reading or writing an article. My education actually is as a nurse. I'm a nurse by education. And so even in nursing school, I was always writing manuals and stories for kids. So yes, it is the fulfillment of my dreams, even when I didn't realize that that was my dream. Oh, wow. Elaine just wrote the same thing I just said. She said, I read that you were originally a nurse. And when writing about things that a nurse knows far more about than the average reader, do you have a rule of thumb about how to tell enough without telling too much? Elaine, I actually haven't written about being a nurse yet. I am in the book I'm writing and the book I'm writing right now. I do talk about being a nurse because a, I was a pediatric nurse, but also my nursing specialty was neurology and closed head injuries, and I'm actually using that in the book I'm writing right now, and it's the first time I've ever done that. So um, I haven't really used being a nurse yet. So I always tell too much in my first draft anyway, so I'm sure that I'm telling too much right now in that first draft. Um, but I'm not sure if I'm telling too much as far as a nurse goes, but we'll see. I'm sure my editor will take it out if I am. Mina asks, and then I found you is on my to read list. Thank you for the chat. That's my question. Thank you. You are more than welcome, Mina. And Kate said, what would you be doing if you couldn't be an author? Oh, Kate, I try to never ask myself that question. Um, sorry, I'm running. I have to plug my computer in. That's a question I try not to think too much about. Um, I don't know what I'd be doing if I couldn't be an author. If I couldn't be an author, I'd be trying to be an author. That's what I'd be doing, I'm sure. Teresa Reading says, I just want to tell you that I love the fact that Kate was flawed and insecure. She says, she was a really realistic character. I'm really looking forward to getting to know more of your characters. Teresa, thank you so much. A couple of the more negative reviews, and there were a couple, did say that they thought Kate was flawed and insecure, and they felt that she was making selfish decisions. And I have to tell you that I did that on purpose. She was a real girl, and she was trying to make real tough decisions in a really tough situation. And to make her be any less than flawed and insecure would have been dishonest. And being honest is one of the things we have to do to make a character real, and that we take the chance of annoying a reader when the character is selfish and insecure. But it was honest. She was in a very tough situation, making really tough choices. So thank you for saying that. And you know, a character who does all good things and says all good things and thinks all good things is usually pretty boring. So I try not to do that. But so thank you, Teresa Reading. Shu 115 says, congratulations on the success of your book. Thank you. I appreciate that. Savvy Who, do your children read your books? And if so, what do they think of them? Okay, we have 2 minutes, so I'm going to try and answer this super quick. My daughter is 20 years old, and she has read all my books and a couple of them twice. And she loves them, or says she loves them. I'd like to think that she's telling the truth. My 2 sons, who are now 18 years old and 15 years old, do not read my books. They pretend to read my books, and my 15-year-old son did a book report on my most recent book, and he says he read most of it. So I hope his teacher's not on this chat. But I don't think he read the whole thing. And I think he did a book report on it because he knew the backstory and could tell everything there was to know. Carmen says, music is such a huge part. Hi, Carmen. Carmen is a dear friend. Carmen, music is such a huge part of your novels. Are you a secret musician? Carmen, you know how much I love music. I think I posted on my Facebook today a new musician I just found named Valerie June, who I fell in love with one of her songs. And Carmen, yes, I am a secret wannabe country music singer. But since I'm tone deaf, that is not going to happen. And music is a huge part of not only the inspiration behind my novels, but musicians have been an inspiration behind the characters in my novels. So thank you for saying that, Carmen, and thank you for noticing. And yes, music. In fact, I was going to have music playing while we did our chat today, and I decided it might be too distracting because I don't do anything without background music. My children make fun of what they call my background music. I have background music on for everything we do, whether we're eating, cooking, talking, driving in the car, I always have music on and love finding new musicians. Okay, I get to announce the official winners of the contest today. I forgot about the contest. How could I forget about the contest? Okay, the official winners of a copy of And Then I Found You are Joube, who I've been calling Job, so I don't know your real name. Susan the Book Bag, Book Fan MB, Diana Lee, and Elaine Drennan Little. If you're one of our lucky winners, please email booktrib@booktrib.com with your mailing address to claim your prize. Congratulations, y'all. And I want to thank everybody for showing up today. This has been really fun for me, even though I do feel a little like a crazy person talking to myself alone in my office. Thank you so much for coming. This was a lot of fun for me, and I hope it was fun for y'all. And BookTrib, I hope you invite me to do it again, and I'll clean up my office a little bit better. How's that? Is that a deal? Okay, thanks, everybody.